Welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast.
I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sansbury.
Welcome once again to Portsmouth's premier political podcast. And if you're listening along live on a Sunday evening, hopefully the fireworks in your area have started to calm down, as the fireworks across the pond may have only just begun. Obviously, we dedicated last week's show to America, and in the long tradition of the Portsmouth Politics podcast, all the predictions were absolutely miles out. So
we missed that one by a mile.
Yeah, we're gonna park America, and we'll probably pick up something on that in the new year. But this evening we are much closer to home, so we are looking at Portsmouth, and we've got a guest to help us.
We do indeed. We are joined with Georgina Fry, who has decided to has agreed to join us this evening. Who's representing Portsmouth Disability Advisory Forum Group. Oh, shall I start that again?
Yeah.
There was only tea in my cup. What?
Yeah, I was going to
say
amateur. Your own teeth this time, and take two.
Right. So, hi Georgina. Thank you. Saved me from my own mishap.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay. So, should we kick right off, Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jump in.
Okay. Lovely. So, so let's if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Georgina, and explain what the Disability Action Group is, what motivated you to get involved?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Georgina Fry. I'm 28 years old, living in Portsmouth, born and raised in Portsmouth. I have a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta, and then a whole cocktail of neuro issues. In relation to that, I've had about 30 surgeries on my head and my neck, and yeah, it's quite interesting and spicy. I was introduced to the Disability Advisory Group or Action Group a few years ago from a friend called Laura, who suggested I come along and join because they need more kind of young people to be a part of the voice in the group as well, and came along to it, and I absolutely loved it, because being a part of the disability advocacy movement here in Portsmouth, sorry, that's my dog, is so important for me, and I really, really enjoy it, and I find it so rewarding, and I love being a part of the conversation of these issues and potential solutions to a lot of them.
Lovely, thank you.
I guess if some people may not be aware of the Portsmouth Disability Advisory Group, so can you share a little bit more about kind of how it's made up, who takes part, and the kind of issues that you've been working on over the last year?
Yes, so we it's a wide variety of people in the group with various disabilities. So a good kind of mixture of experiences that people come in to our meetings and have a chat with us about, and say this is an issue or that's an issue. And in the last kind of year and a bit, we've been particularly focused on accessible child support, which is a huge problem in the city and needs to be looked at and resolved a lot better. Yeah. And and I'm also personally interested in looking at the other issues, like the direct payments funding scheme for adult social care, and what it's like at the moment and how it can be improved in the future.
So in terms of the makeup of the group, you mentioned, is there quite a wide range of disabilities that are represented?
Yeah. So, Ian, that's how I met you. And So there's people like with a lot of physical disabilities like myself. There's people who have visual impairments. There are people who have more mental health impairments. One of my friends and now kind of new members of the group, she's got cerebral palsy and is non-verbal. She's quite limited, but she still wants to be a part of it, and so she should. So yeah, there's a good mix there, and then a good kind of way of showing how people kind of come across certain issues, and I find that really interesting.
That's brilliant. And for full disclosure for our listeners or viewers,
Yeah.
I am one of those old people that G described at the start there. So yeah, I'm part of the group representing the vision impaired sector. No, G would never be so rude, but
I'm sorry if it came across that way.
No, it
Do
didn't,
we
G, but,
define you as Disability Advisory Group Elder now? Is that
yeah,
is that
yeah,
is that the moniker we're
possibly
giving you?
It probably would be if I could grow a beard, but I've never been able to. So no, I think I can confirm it's a lovely diverse mix of people.
Yeah, it really is.
Who are keen to support across the city.
Yes, hello. Yeah.
That's okay. We're used to pets. Don't worry. In either
Yeah.
Ian's cats or my cats or Ian's dog. So don't worry about pets. It's fine. Or assistance animals. It's they're all welcome.
If you just because I've got my black Labrador here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, dog chat. Yeah, I've got my black Labrador here, and he gets a little bit fussy if he's not getting enough attention.
Ah, right.
He's only two and a bit, so yeah.
Oh, well, we're sorry we didn't arrange to give him his own camera then and actually kind of bring him straight on.
Next podcast, dog cam.
Yeah, that's what we'll have to. We need to put that in the show notes, Ian.
Yeah.
So thinking of some of the areas of concerns, you talked about transport in your opening remarks. So one area of concern has been the availability of wheelchair accessible taxis.
Yes.
Can you explain what the problem there is and what the cause might be and how that actually impacts and affects your daily life?
What the cause be? I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say I know as much about the cause as possible, but certainly after COVID and the pandemic, the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles dwindled down hugely. A lot of people went back to their home countries in Europe, and they were the wheelchair accessible vehicle drivers. And it's also, from what I understand, not very profitable to have wheelchair accessible vehicles. Like it makes much more sense for a big vehicle to have multiple able-bodied people than one disabled person. And that just doesn't sit right with me. And also the fact that it costs like 20 quid just to get up to QA for one trip is absolutely flipping ridiculous in my mind. Because I'm on benefits, so that money, I can't just shell out a lot, and it's very difficult. But yeah, so medical appointments are a big issue for me, and the alternative would be to take the bus, but then to get up to QA it takes like an hour. Whereas like in a car or a taxi it can take like 15 minutes. It's just very frustrating from my end. And then even the further afield as well, like I'd love to go and see family more in like my sister in Kent, for instance, or going to Southampton, or going to Winchester or Chichester, whereabouts can I do that? And getting the train is quite difficult as well. Like that's another issue. So it's not, it doesn't seem like there's an easy stress-free solution at the moment. And that's why I love being a part of the conversation of change, because it's like, again, that's how I want to use it. Where where can people get to this stage of it being a usable service?
Mm.
So I
And
guess if we think about wheelchair accessible vehicles,
Yeah.
gee, some of our listeners won't be aware, but um,
Mm.
for some of the members of the group, it's not a case of putting their wheelchair in the boot. There is a whole
No, no.
effectively. Could you just give a description of kind of what's involved for somebody who's who is in their chair and can't self-mobilize?
Okay.
What is involved in taking a wheelchair taxi
So
journey?
a wheelchair accessible vehicle, also known as a WAV, it's basically a gutted out minivan. I mean, it really depends how big the kit is that you want to transport. And it can have a ramp either from the back or from the side to get a wheelchair up and in, and then it's secured into place. And then that vehicle can travel like a normal car. They don't have to be huge transit vans. They can be little, they can be small jobs
Mm.
or they can be bigger jobs. It really depends on the person and their wheelchair. Because I've used both. I've damaged my car, my wheels in both. But yeah, it depends. But the thing is, with those WAVs, they need to have professionals who know what they're doing, because they need to be safely secured in place so that they're not going to move. There's no issues with insurance or injury or anything like that. And to make it comfortable for the person, they're not going to fall down the ramp, because that's happened before. Yeah.
And I guess to give people an idea of scale, most people now are using an app of some kind to order their taxi.
Yes.
In most of the time in Portsmouth, you tap the app and it's probably 5-10 minutes for your taxi to turn up.
Yeah, lovely.
What's the experience of somebody like yourself who's
Oh my gosh.
who's after a WAV?
Yeah. So, okay. So I wake up one morning and say, "Oh, I've got a hospital appointment on." Okay, it's Monday. I've got a hospital appointment on Wednesday. I phone up a certain company that shan't be named, but is very water based, and say, "I need to pre-book a taxi." "Oh no, sorry, we can't do that." "Okay, you have to phone on the day." "Okay," so I wait and I phone on the day. "No, sorry, we don't have any taxis available." What do I do? I'm kind of at a loss for words, and I just generally now avoid going by taxis at all, which is really difficult because then I'm constrained to Portsmouth, I feel like.
but if you've got an appointment that you needed to get to, you said you said about getting to QA. If you had an appointment that day to get to, and there just wasn't a suitable vehicle available, you'd then just have to get the bus, would you, or would you?
I would have to get the bus, and that takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And bear in mind, when I do that, I would have a carer with me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's taking up their time and it's taking up their money. I have only a certain amount of funded hours, so I feel like I'm wasting time sat on a bus rather than doing jobs at home. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of constrained from every direction, really. It's not like you've got a
Pretty
choice to go
much,
somewhere
yeah.
else for a taxi, or you've got no way of knowing that, okay, there are taxis
Yeah.
on this day, but there aren't on this day, or there are at this time and not at this time.
No. Like, I don't know how many wheelchair accessible vehicles there are in Portsmouth at the moment. It would be really nice to have some kind of private app which is completely separate from any of the mainstreams, to just be only for wheelchair users or only for people with disabilities. And I have no idea how that would work. It's just one can dream.
Yeah, but it's not an impossible thing. I'm sure someone can set up an app that that does something like that. But it seems that
Yeah.
I guess.
mean, sorry.
No, come on.
I'm sure setting up the app would be fine. It's just finding the drivers
Yeah.
and the cars. It's finding those, which is the headache.
To maybe it almost sounds, and this is my brain trying to think of solutions, because I try to find answers to things, but it almost sounds like because of how taxis are set up, because essentially the drivers are all they work when they want. They're not given kind of shifts or told to work specific hours. Because of that, they've got, the taxi company has no way of saying we have a minimum of X number of disabled suitable vehicles over these sorts of times, or to cover at least kind of the daytime. There is no kind of requirement for them to do that, or indeed an ability for them to do that. And then that just leaves you with taking potluck every time you want to go somewhere.
Yeah, it is. It does feel like just potluck every time. And I like to plan. I like to think ahead. It'd be great to book these taxis in, but yeah, I can't do that, and I don't want to deal with the stress. So I just assume I'm going by bus, or Mum can take me there and back. And yeah, I don't really like playing the fun game of will they, won't they?
Yeah, it's
so if I whip my if I whip my presenter's hat off for a moment, one of the challenges is that most drivers are self-employed, and there is often there are lucrative contracts out there for work for schools, transporting disabled students in the morning and the evening, in the afternoon, to take people to school. And so at that point, those are kind of 2.5 hours at the start and end of the day, when most of the WAVs are off doing school contracts. But I will take my contributor's hat back off and hand over to you, Simon, as the presenter.
Okay. Deftly changing roles there. Well done.
Yeah.
Just to kind of bring into that conversation, we've got a couple of comments from viewers, so I just wanted to kind of pop those in as well, so we can speak to those. So we've got where's it gone? He said, so John talks about his so he's the carer for his disabled wife, and he talks about his focus on mobility and the failure of the local authorities and facilities to think disabled by design, pavements and curbs. Well, that's disappeared too quickly. Where's that gone? Come back. The pavements and curbs, particularly in Southsea, are uneven, broken.
Yes.
They're like mountains. Shops and cafes and restaurants have lips at the door, so it makes maneuverability different. He goes on to say, building adaptations are bounded by bizarre procedures. If use is not exclusive, then funding and VAT relief is impossible. We were offered a stair lift to 4th floor, presumably dismounting to people's doors. He's written to Portsmouth South MP, and hasn't got a response on VAT rules and Section 20 delays. I'm not sure what Section 20 delays are. Perhaps John, you can elaborate on that. Being without then a lift for 9 months. So that, I mean, that sounds like they were pretty much imprisoned in their own home for for 9 months, which is just unthinkable. If we try to kind of imagine that, we did have a couple of other comments that we had April who talked about. Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah,
I was going to say, if you've got them to hand, but I think John's question probably segues, or John's observation segues into our next question, which was last month. Yourself and a number of members of the Portsmouth DAG went on a walkabout with Stephen Morgan. Portsmouth South. Well, I say it was a walkabout, but it was a train, a bit of moving between arrangements, a bus ride, and then down to the seafront to have a look at the beach for accessibility. How did that experience go for the group, and what do you hope might come from it, and was there any feedback from Steve?
I think I haven't heard any feedback so far, except for on the day he posted on his social medias, that was just a really positive thing for him to do and for him to experience. And it's for me, it was really positive as well, because not every single moment of that day was perfect, and nor should it
No, it
be.
wasn't.
This is the reality of what we have to deal with, from anything from ordering the taxis to going down to, it was a junior Great South Run happening in Portsmouth that day. So going down to the seafront, he could see the absolute nightmare that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So it was like, I hate having to get into arguments with people, but if it means like highlighting an issue, then yeah, sure. Like a bit of a few experiences to add on to the list.
Yeah, it was.
And,
As I say, I shall definitely switch hats again.
yeah, go for it.
We walked from Portsmouth Harbour Station to where the buses depart from, and I think that we had 4 wheelchair users and 2 vision impaired people with guide dogs, and we got to the
Mm,
bus stop, and there was a small sign on the bus stop that said, "Bus stops are not departing from here. Please proceed to St George's Square." And
yeah.
Stephen kind of turned and said, "What would you do now?" And my
Mm.
answer as a vision impaired person with a guide dog is stand about like a lemon until somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "They're not here. They're at St George's Square." And yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
yeah. That's another thing of why I really value the group as well, is because of our difference in disabilities, and it's not a competition at all. I could see there were building works happening, and I knew where the other bus stops were. But it's like I wouldn't have thought about that. So that was really educational for me as well.
And one thing that equally surprised me on the other side was the attitude and experience that you got from the bus drivers.
Yeah, it's hot or cold. And I think I don't know, the sense that I got that day was because we had Stephen there, we kind of had a bit of the gold star treatment. So I'm thinking, if you were to ever do it again, we probably have to get him in like a wig and a mustache and jeans and t-shirt and shove him in a wheelchair. Um, that sounds a bit aggressive, but yeah, it's figuring out the best way of showing these issues without trying to like make it something it's not, because in the end of the day we do have some really horrible experiences in public transport, and it would have been great to have shown the reality of that, but yeah, I mean, no, we did, but not into the fullest of extents.
Yeah, it was very interesting
Yeah.
that one of our party also, we couldn't be certain that they had had a refusal for their guide dog, but a taxi pulled up, looked at them,
Oh.
drove away, and then the another taxi was immediately allocated to them and
Oh,
taken
yeah,
care
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
shortly afterwards. So
So
I
as
think
examples go, that was in some ways that was a good example, if that's pretty typical of the experiences that
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
facing.
and I think it was a good example because it was that element of the vision impaired person had a sighted member of parliament with them there that
Mm,
worked out what had actually or what they believed had gone on, but
mm,
obviously from a proving that that had
Mm.
happened perspective, even with a sighted person in tow,
yeah.
it was, you know, the reason why the job got changed. You couldn't prove it. So I guess to come back to that last piece of the question, G, what do you hope might come of that day and that visit?
I hope it's not all just gonna fall flat. Like, I hope that kind of awareness of accessible transportation, especially in Portsmouth, has come onto the radar of the government. And I hope changes can be made and more conversations can be had, especially around the taxi companies, and especially around buses. Yeah, I just hope more can come from that, and it's just not going to be all for nothing. Because it took a while to organise that, and it was such a good thing to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully something will come of it. I guess some of these changes aren't sadly are gonna take a while to kind of make happen. But
Yeah.
it's certainly I mean, Ian had spoken to me about that day and the
Yeah.
sorts of things that it experienced, and they just weren't things that if I'm honest, I'd considered. So they're just things that I'd have taken completely for granted and wouldn't have kind of considered those impacts and actually those sorts of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was interesting even from the sort of start. That two of our team turned up at Fratton railway station and arrived there just before 10, and there was no staff there. So if you wanted a ticket and you were vision impaired, you couldn't have got one. If you were a wheelchair user, the anxiety levels would have started to rise because unless there's someone to put the ramp out to get onto the train,
Yeah.
you're not getting on. So there's those levels, and then luckily, 10 o'clock staff arrived, spotted Stephen Morgan in a suit, and at that point suddenly couldn't be helpful enough. Now, I'm not saying I can't say that that's not how they always are, but obviously, if you had to catch a train before 10 and you were doing that spontaneously as a vision impaired person or a wheelchair user,
No,
your Saturday might have gone horribly wrong.
you can't do that. You can't spontaneously turn up. Well, normally you can't. Like passenger assistance has to be pre-booked. It has to be in like 99.999% of the cases, and their system is very good. They've got an app on there, but again, that's not great for those that have visual impairments because can they see everything? And I didn't think about that until one of our colleagues, who's also got visual impairments, pointed that out. That's really difficult because then I have to constantly think 5 steps ahead all the time. I can't just be like, oh, I feel like going to Southampton today. I go. No. I'd have to look at the diary and think about when to schedule it in, and oh, who have I got care wise that day, and oh, what's going to happen to my dog, and yeah, just all of that, and just having to put all those steps in my head all the time makes me just exhausted, and I just give up.
It's a, I mean, I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but it feels like a deep restriction of your freedom to.
Yeah, 100%. I feel there are so many movements and projects out there that are trying to increase movement and inspire independence and all of that. But it's like sometimes I don't feel, well, I feel so incredibly secluded in my bedroom at home. And that's really difficult. Like, I would love to go out and do more adventure. In the end of the day, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie in the wrong body. And I'd love to just go out and do crazy stuff and go and see people, go to zoos, go to London, go and see my sister, go see my brother, and all the other friends and family that I've got in all areas of the country. But I can't because I have to do 20 million things just to even get to the train station, I feel like.
Yeah, it's
I think just to chip in there, Simon, sometimes there's the big things and the little things, and the big things are no ramp, you don't get onto the train, so you got to plan that in
Mm,
advance. But some of the little things are, you know, to give you an example, it wasn't on the bus we were on, but on the second bus, because you can't get multiple wheelchair, users and
No.
guide dog owners on the same bus. The electric ramp, the ramp
Yeah.
broke. So there's that element of, you're a bus user yourself, Simon. The protocol is you look down, you never make eye contact. Everybody's sort of trying to stay within their own bubble. But obviously, if you're the wheelchair user at the front of the bus and the bus is stopped and the driver's fiddling about with the ramp and to be fair, is apologizing, doing all of those things, but
Yeah.
that's the conversation with the
I've
person who
had
was on that bus. Sorry, carry on, G.
Yeah, no, sorry. I've had some really awkward encounters with bus drivers who are disabled themselves, and they have to, like, they really have to get out and put the ramp out, and it's like I felt awful at this poor guy who had very little mobility get out and struggle to get this ramp out. We were in London over the last couple of days, and I had the joy of going on some of my favourite buses on the planet. The London buses have the accessible entrance midway down the bus with an electric ramp, and then you go on, and the accessible parking area is right there. So there's no awkward way of getting around the corner or anything like that. It's just no nonsense. It's right there. And then the trains that we had in Holland, they were level to the platform, and they had a ramp that came out regardless of if there's a wheelchair user or not. They would come out and reach the platform. It's just, why can't this be normalised?
Yeah, indeed. It's because the technology is obviously there.
Yeah.
It's not like these things are impossible. It's either, I don't know, there isn't a will and therefore there isn't a way being found, but someone else has obviously found a way to do it. So is that money? Is that just them not, the bus companies not having to consider these things when they're purchasing their stock, or the train companies when they're developing their platforms? But either way, those decisions that at their design or procurement stage might feel quite irrelevant are actually really fundamental to actually the ability of disabled passengers to be able to use the service and get it and actually get around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one. One of the comments, but I know we were kind of talking on from John's comment. He gave us an explanation about Section 20, and I'll speak to that in a minute. But one of the other things that he suggested is that perhaps all councillors also need to do a follow around. Maybe actually, if they experience that themselves, then that might lead to some different decisions. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I just have an image in my head of just members of parliament just going around in wheelchairs.
Well, yeah, I don't know that.
Come out the chamber.
42 councillors from Portsmouth City Council following someone around in a wheelchair might not necessarily be the experience that you were after, but
that would be quite the sight.
It would. But again, even if someone as visible as Stephen Morgan, when you had that day with him, even if when that happened, you spoke about it might have changed some of the responses. But even on that day, the experiences that you had did throw up some really fundamental issues. So it's quite interesting to see. So it'd be good to see what kind of comes from that. John went on to explain that the Section 20 is about the Landlord and Tenant Act in 1997 that requires freeholders to consult with tenants if work is going to and costs any more tenant more than a certain amount, and it means that, for example, a lift repair requires a succession of processes and supply demands with each new component taking 7 weeks for delivery. So it kind of sounds like there's a succession of things rather than an overall requirement to get a fundamental thing like a lift fixed within a short amount of time. So that again, if you're, for want of a better word, if you're trapped in your flat and not able to get out and go anywhere, but also not knowing when that is going to end and when you're going to have your ability to actually use a lift and get out again back. That's, I mean, that must be frustrating, quite depressing, and probably quite terrifying, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did have a couple more comments, Ian. Did you want me to share them now?
No, go for them. Go for them.
We had, so when we posted about the show on Facebook, we had some comments from April, who also talked about one of the most dangerous obstacles in her experience that disabled people face is cyclists and e-scooters riders on footpaths.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
sorry,
go on.
Yeah. So I have a fixed neck because of my bone condition and my neuro stuff, and my eyes are, sorry, Ian, they're pretty messed up as well. Like I've got a squint, so I see double vision, so my depth of field is terrible. So going out in the dark is a nightmare for me. And so having like something go so quickly and so silently right next to me with absolutely no regard for like awareness of a wheelchair and like, can they get injured? You know, this thing can suddenly, it's pretty powerful and it can go quite fast. And so if you freak me out, I could really hurt yourself or myself. And it's just, that's scary. That's really scary. And unfortunately, I haven't had any collisions, but with the way some people drive, I get scared that it possibly could happen.
But again, even if you've not experienced any collisions, just that fear of someone zipping past you, coming out of nowhere, and you not having the mobility to move easily out the way and not knowing what they're going to do. April went on to say that her husband is disabled and has been knocked over 3 times by bikes and scooters, twice in Fratton Road, once in Arundel Street, and when he was knocked down, he ended up in hospital. So we're really sorry to hear that, April. Hope he's doing well. But that shared paths with pedestrians, bicycles and e-scooters with no speed restriction, and they zip along the pavement, weaving in and out of pedestrians at 15-20 miles an hour. So it's
absolutely no regard. I do feel like wheelchair awareness needs to be taught a lot more, especially in schools, because a lot of these people are very young and definitely kind of secondary school age, and I would love to be a part of educating people in the community that this is a wheelchair, please give us some space, because you never know what disabilities and how we could, what kind of havoc could happen.
Well, just that kind of taking a pause and having a bit of consideration and understanding for the other people in the public space around you, that that just they might well not be happy with someone zipping past them at 15 miles an hour and appearing silently like a ninja, and then zipping past you. Ian has his own descriptor for electric vehicles on that basis.
Blindy killers.
They're what? Sorry?
Blindy killers.
Blindy killers.
Yep. Yeah. And so electrical vehicles, if you can't hear the tire noise, then they can be very problematic.
So. If they're fast enough, I feel like it's sort of okay because it's a tire and the wind. But when they're really slow, that's when it's a bit of an issue. I'm talking 10 miles an hour less. That's got to be, and my hearing's not great either. So just add that into the mix of issues that I have to deal with. So going out at the moment, for me in my wheelchair, like today I was traveling over to do volunteering at a church, and I have to, it takes out so much energy in my brain, and there's not a lot, but it takes a lot to kind of focus on getting across the road safely, remembering where all the dip curbs are, because they someone said, they are not perfect at all, and they can really hurt if you go over them badly. And then what bicyclists are going to be there, and what I mean, well, e-scooters aren't really out at that time of day, but if that's an issue, that's an issue. So it's exhausting. It's actually exhausting.
Yeah, just all other things, and just to follow up, John, liked your suggestion about working with schools,
Yeah.
and trying to get that into schools. That's a good way to hopefully educate the next generation, and kind of perhaps kind of deal with that. But I think for me, it's just the eye-opening thing of considering that from that experience, and all of the things that I take for granted aren't things that are actually, some of those they might feel like quite insignificant things to me, but actually if your choice to use them is restricted in the ways that you're describing, and your experience of the street environment can be quite hostile, then it's not exactly encouraging you to get out and about and enjoy the city, is it?
No, it's not. So my mental health gets absolutely demolished, and my willingness to go out. I mean, that's half the reason why I've got that four-legged potato over there, just so he can get me out of the house and get me excited to get out of the house. And I love that, but I just don't feel like that's enough for any human flipping being to just be just so constricted to one particular pathway at certain times of the day to avoid crashing into X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Well, hopefully people can empathise with that, because during COVID, there were times when we were restricted about when we could go out. We were told we could only go out at certain times of the day. And we could all understand that actually that wasn't very good for our mental health, and we didn't like it very much.
No.
So maybe there's a bit of reflection from the rest of the population at large about, we didn't like it then, so can we translate that into some actions to help make it easier for everyone else to get around?
Yeah, it's kind of looking back to the pandemic and COVID. It's obviously awful that everyone was locked down and everybody was stuck, but a little part of me was just having that voice in my head that said, oh, now people know what it's like. And I hated that it comes to that, and I don't like people experiencing what I've been experiencing, but if it created some, but I feel like all of that's just gone now that we've come out the other side, and people just don't care anymore. They're just like, oh yeah, we got our freedom back. It's like, okay, well, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm still stuck.
It's a shame if we've forgotten those lessons and lost our empathy and understanding on it.
Yeah.
So if we look at support for disabled people in Portsmouth, G, what would you say is working well? And if there's one thing that you would want to see improved, what would that be?
So one thing that Portsmouth, I think, does really, really well is it's got really well established groups of people with disabilities around Portsmouth, whether that be the university or disability advisory group or Facebook communities and groups. And I all love that everybody's like working on different things. Like the university is particularly focused on like some of the social worker stuff, and disability advisory group is involved with like policies and some of the kind of core structures around how Portsmouth works around disability. Yeah, I would love to see kind of more more involvement from those groups, and especially into different areas. Like the Disability Advisory Group is working on things like the accessible transport, but also things like employment, things like direct payments. And it'd be really cool to kind of explore those areas as well. Like I'm really interested in the direct payments funding scheme. And so I'd love to see kind of more input into that. And that's actually what I'm working on at the moment.
And if there is, and it almost feels unreasonable to ask you to pick just one area that you'd like to see improved.
Direct payments, adult social care. If I had to be completely honest, but because that's a thing that does affect me on a day-to-day basis. Is having care support and people come in and being able to look after me and making sure that I have the funding to do so. And it's ridiculous that I have to fight for said funding and say, yes, my disability has gotten worse. No, I'm not kidding. Yeah.
It's another area of fight, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah. I just find myself like banging my head against a brick wall sometimes. Yeah.
So
Simon.
looking ahead at the next year, what are your hopes and ambitions for the DAG and for yourself? What's 2025 going to bring, you hope?
I really hope to see a positive result on this accessible transport campaign, because then it says to me, and I will hope to say to other people, especially in government positions, that this is a group, we are a group that can do something and we are effective in change. And then it can explore different areas of different issues that we experience in the community. Yeah.
Okay.
What about for yourself, G? What are your hopes for? Because I think many people who've listened to this today will have heard some of the struggles and the battles, but I think that there'll also be that kind of recognition that
Yeah.
you are not a shrinking violet, and you're prepared to face these battles head on. And as with any kind of challenge, some days it feels easier than others, but
Yeah.
again, it's that
Yeah.
what are you shooting for next year?
Well, I feel like a completely underqualified disabled potato that has absolutely no idea about policies and laws and logistics and things like that. I'm just a person in the community with lots of disabilities on lots of benefits, just trying to get my way around. And there are so many blocks here, and there. And I want to see those untangled. And that's where being a part of the Disability Advisory Group, being a part of the university group, being a part of my adult social care group, I feel like that's where it's so flipping rewarding. And I want to see those projects expand and grow, because I feel like it's such an exciting time to be a part of these movements and these places. And then I hope that what we're doing here in Portsmouth can inspire other cities to grow and to be like, oh, I like what they're doing. Can we do something similar? Because I don't know. I don't know if there are any other kind of disability advisory group kind of movements in other cities. So I feel really privileged to be a part of this.
Simon.
Thank you. I just wanted to close off with some. We've had some really great contributions in the chat from John, so really appreciate that. He agreed with the point about
Love you, John.
About payments. He was saying that if you've got a spousal carer, you can't have carer's allowance. But his kind of closing statement there was, how can, and he says, how can I or we help improve things? And I guess that's actually a good question. How can the rest of us help make things better?
Well, in terms of adult social care.
Well, in terms of improving the situation for transport and for other things for our disabled neighbours and fellow residents.
Get involved in as many projects as you feel you can, and whatever suits you. So, like, we're a part of the Disability Advisory Group. People are more than welcome to join our group. I'm also involved in the social work inclusion group at the university, so that helps get involved. Yeah, my English is terrible. I'm so sorry. That helps individuals to get involved with the kind of the raising up of the new generation of social workers or pharmacists or nurses or physiotherapists or anything like that. Then I've also got my own group, which is PCPA, so Portsmouth Carers and Personal Assistants, and that is like solely focused around adult social care and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of other groups to be involved with. There's a Portsmouth Wheelchair Access Group, which is much more of a community-based group as well. So just go out there, do your research, see what sticks, what kind of piques your interest.
Okay, that's fantastic. We'll later on we'll share the links to those organisations in the descriptions when we push to podcasting all of the podcasty places.
Podcasting, please.
Perfect. So thank you ever so much, G, for coming and giving your perspective this evening. And I'm sure I'll see you at a Portsmouth DAG meeting very soon. So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And our guest this evening has been Georgina Fry from Portsmouth Disability Advisory Group. I've been Simon Sainsbury. Join us next week at 6:27 when we'll be taking a look at Tuesday's full council meeting. So do see us there, but don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode of the podcast. So see you then. He says, where's the...
Hey. Oh, John's great.
He is indeed. Thank you, John. And he says, don't apologise, you're doing a great job. So thank you very much, John.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining in. Let me just get us... Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.